Davos, Switzerland, January 2025. Snow outside, power inside. The world's most influential people packed into one room. Presidents, prime ministers, central bankers, billionaires who move markets with a sentence, and in the middle of it all, one statement landed like a quiet bomb. Gold is now the second largest currency in the world. Not the euro, not the yen, not Bitcoin, gold. No flashing headline, no breaking news alert, just a sentence that should have stopped everything. Because if you understand what that really means, you understand why investors are panicking, why central banks are scrambling, and why your savings are standing on thinner ice than you think. While you were sleeping, while you were watching Netflix, while you were scrolling endlessly, the smartest money on earth made a decision. Sovereign wealth funds, central banks, institutions that manage trillions. They looked at US Treasury bonds and quietly said, "No thank you." Instead, they chose gold. Not paper claims, not promises. Physical metal, locked away. Why would the people who designed the system start walking away from it? What do they see that most people don't? Here's the truth nobody is saying out loud. The game changed. The rules that protected wealth for decades no longer work. For years, the playbook was simple. Governments issued bonds. Central banks bought those bonds. Investors trusted those bonds. The US borrowed cheaply. Buyers earned a safe return. The system fed itself. Everyone smiled. But that system just cracked, and the people running it know it. They're just hoping you don't notice until it's too late. At Davos, one of the world's most successful investors explained it in the simplest terms possible. Debt is fine when it's small. Debt becomes deadly when it grows faster than income. At first, it's manageable. Then it starts squeezing everything else. Spending, growth, stability. That rule applies to households. It applies to companies. And it applies to nations. Right now, the United States is carrying over $38 trillion in debt. Just the interest alone costs more than $1 trillion every single year. Not paying down the debt, just servicing it. That's more than defense, more than education. Over $3,000 per person every year, forever, just to stand still. And here's where reality bites. Every bond issued is someone else's money on the line. Someone has to buy that debt. China, Japan, pension funds, your retirement account. Someone has to hand over cash and say, "I trust you." But what happens when buyers stop trusting? What happens when demand dries up while supply explodes? That's the problem now tearing at the global financial system. Governments need to issue more debt than ever, while the world is already drowning in it. And increasingly, the answer to "do you want more?" is no. There are two reasons, and both should unsettle you. First, the math doesn't work anymore. If you're a foreign central bank holding treasuries yielding 4% while inflation runs close to that, your real return is almost zero. Maybe 1% on a good day. Is that worth the risk of lending to a government adding trillions more in debt every year? At some point, you look for alternatives, and gold sits there, silent, waiting. Second, geopolitics changed the equation. Trade wars don't stay about tariffs. They turn into capital wars, sanctions, asset freezes, financial weapons. If you're a country holding reserves in US dollars, you have to ask a brutal question. What if those assets get frozen? This isn't theory. Russia watched hundreds of billions vanish overnight, not stolen, just locked. If it happened once, it can happen again. So why keep wealth in a system that can turn hostile? Gold can't be frozen with a signature. Gold doesn't care who's in power. Gold just exists. That's why central banks aren't hesitating. They're selling treasuries and buying gold at a pace not seen in generations. In 2025 alone, gold surged by roughly 67%. Not because people bought more jewelry, because institutions bought thousands of tons of physical metal. While advisors told clients to stay diversified, the people who actually understand the system were exiting quietly. Let me make this real. Michael was 58 in 2020. Engineer, disciplined saver, he did everything right. Over 30 years, he built $900,000. His advisor put 60% into treasury bonds. Safe, guaranteed, the foundation of retirement. When warnings started appearing, Michael trusted the expert. Gold was dismissed as paranoia. Charts were shown. History was cited. Michael stayed the course. Then interest rates surged. Bond prices collapsed. In less than 2 years, Michael lost $270,000, a third of his future. He was told not to worry. Bonds always recover. But time was something Michael didn't have. By 2024, his savings were down to $630,000. Not from speculation, from doing what he was told was safe. Meanwhile, gold quietly climbed from under $1,800 to over $30,100. I saw Michael recently. He's 64, still working. Not by choice. His plans erased. His advisor unchanged. Same recommendations, same fees. Michael paid the price. The system moved on. Now pause here. Because this is where most people realize something feels wrong, but they haven't connected the dots yet. In the next section, I'll show you the other side of this story, the people who understood the shift early, why gold behaves differently than every other asset, and exactly how this crisis plays out from here. Now let me show you the other side of this story, the people who didn't wait for headlines, the people who understood that when central banks move, you pay attention. I know a woman named Sarah. In 2021, she was 52 years old, a school teacher, careful with money, not wealthy, just disciplined. She had about $450,000 saved for retirement. Her portfolio looked like everyone else's: stocks, bonds, balanced, sensible. Her advisor told her she was doing everything right. But Sarah started reading. Not headlines, history, debt cycles, what happens when governments borrow too much and central banks start printing to keep the system alive. She noticed something most people missed. Central banks weren't talking about inflation anymore. They were talking about managing it. She asked her advisor about gold. He dismissed it instantly. Gold doesn't produce income. Gold is a speculation. Stick to the plan. Sarah ignored him. She moved just 15% of her portfolio into physical gold, not mining stocks, not ETFs, real metal, coins held outside the financial system. Friends told her she was paranoid. Her advisor said she was making a mistake. She didn't argue. She just acted. From 2021 to early 2026, markets struggled. Stocks went sideways after inflation. Bonds were crushed as rates rose. But Sarah's gold position climbed roughly 67%. That single decision offset most of her losses elsewhere. While Michael watched his retirement slip away, Sarah stayed on track. Same economy, same crisis, two completely different outcomes. Here's the difference. Sarah understood something critical. Gold is not an investment in the traditional sense. It's not designed to make you rich. It's designed to stop you from becoming poor when the system breaks, and the system always breaks eventually. Throughout history, money has taken only two forms: hard money and fiat money. Hard money is tied to something real: gold, silver, something limited. Fiat money is backed by nothing but trust. Governments can create it endlessly. Both systems work until they don't. When debt grows too large under hard money, governments face a choice: honor the system and endure depression, or break the link and inflate. Every modern government chooses inflation, always. Because no politician survives deflation. Inflation quietly transfers wealth. It doesn't cause riots immediately. It erodes savings slowly. And every single time this choice is made, gold explodes in price. Not because gold changes, because money does. In the 1930s, gold was revalued overnight. In the 1970s, after the gold window closed, gold rose over 20-fold. In the 2000s, after massive monetary easing, gold surged again. And now, with debt higher than ever, history is repeating. We've been in a pure fiat system since 1971, more than half a century. No anchor, no constraint, just money creation to solve every problem. And in every fiat system across history, the ending is the same. Currency loses purchasing power, debt becomes unpayable, trust erodes, gold survives. This is why central banks now treat gold as money again. Not a relic, not a hedge, a reserve. That alone should tell you everything. The institutions that issue fiat currencies are choosing to protect themselves from fiat currencies. Most investors make a fatal mistake here. They treat gold like a stock. They ask whether it will go up next month. That's the wrong question. Gold is insurance. You don't buy insurance hoping your house burns down. You buy it because if it does, you're protected. A strategic allocation to gold means permanently owning some of the safest money ever created. Historically, that range sits between 5 and 15% of a portfolio, enough to protect you when the system strains, not so much that you sacrifice growth. Here's the frightening part. Most people own zero gold, none, no insurance. They're fully exposed to stocks, bonds, and real estate, all assets dependent on the same monetary system. When that system comes under pressure, everything falls together. Michael had zero protection, Sarah had some. That difference decided their futures. Now let's talk about timing. When does gold deserve a higher allocation? 3 conditions. First, unsustainable debt paired with money printing. That's happening now. Second, rising risk of asset freezes, sanctions, or capital controls. That's happening now. Third, economic conflict escalating into financial warfare. That's happening now too. We are not in normal times. We are in a transition. Markets haven't fully priced it yet because stock indexes are still near highs, but smart money already moved. Central banks didn't wait for confirmation. They acted. Gold has something no other asset has. Low counterparty risk. It's not a promise. It's not a contract. It doesn't rely on someone else's performance. Stocks can be nationalized. Bonds can default. Property can be taxed, seized, or regulated into irrelevance. Gold just sits there, silent, patient. That's why it survives wars, revolutions, collapses. An ounce of gold has bought roughly the same amount of real goods for thousands of years. No fiat currency can say that. Every single one eventually fails. So what do? First, calculate 5 to 15% of your investable assets. Not your house, not your business. Your liquid savings and investments. That's your baseline protection. Second, buy physical gold, not paper claims, coins or bars you own outright. Third, store it securely, where you control access. Fourth, ignore the noise. Advisors, media, friends. Most are trapped in the old framework. And if you truly understand where we are in the cycle, consider holding more than the minimum. Central banks already are. They don't wait for permission. Here's what usually happens next. Most people agree with everything they just heard. Then they do nothing, because nothing feels broken yet, until it does. And when it does, gold won't be calmly available. It will gap higher, supplies will vanish, premiums will explode. Don't be Michael, don't understand the warning and ignore it. Be Sarah. Act while there's still time. The institutions already chose gold. The smartest money already moved. History already showed you how this ends. Now the only question left is simple. When the story is told 5 years from now, which side will you be on? B.